Think about the many times in your life when you just felt totally misunderstood. The good news is that you're not alone in this feeling. In fact, feeling misunderstood may be one of the many things that you have in common with other people, and maybe one of the things that you have most in common with most other people. Imagine how much better your life would feel if you didn't perceive yourself as being so misunderstood. In this video, I'm going to share with you a powerful method to not only be understood by other people better, but to also understand yourself better. Hi, my name is Richard L. Haight. I'm the author of The Unbound Soul, a book just named one of the best books on consciousness of all time by Book Authority. I spent 15 years studying in Japan the ancient ways and received master's licenses in 4 Japanese martial arts as well as 1 healing art. Through my training, I received great wisdom that I'd like to share with you. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce you to and offer you a free 1-month trial of the Warrior's Meditation. You can click the link below to begin your exploration of a meditation that utterly transformed my life and that will utterly transform yours as well. Enter the discount code August 2019 for your free 1 month. Hope to see you there. And now on to the content of this video. I used to feel totally alone, totally misunderstood. And I often thought that I was one of the few people that felt that way. Through my process of awakening, I've begun to see through that illusion. And I used to teach a meditation class in the city. And when I did that, I would, on occasion, bring people, when I could pull someone aside, ask them how they felt about the other group and if they felt like they were understood. And almost everybody, without exception, felt that they were misunderstood or not understood, and that they couldn't really be themselves. Now, they were very open with me, but not very open with each other. The strange thing is that everybody felt the same way, it's just that nobody knew it. And so one of the things about when we feel misunderstood, oftentimes we feel misunderstood because we're actually creating a false front. We're afraid to be judged, so we don't show our authentic self. And because almost everybody is not showing their authentic self, of course, we can't be understood. We're unable to be authentic. And therefore, we feel sort of defensive, blocked off, shielded, unable to be open with people. And we feel that lack of openness, that shielding, is a sort of defense mechanism that protects us, when in reality, it feels very weak. In fact, if you look at most of the people that you really admire in life, these are people that are unabashedly able to express themselves. They're able to express when they feel ashamed or when they feel awkward, or they're able to just be honest about whatever it is that they're going through, and maybe even have a sense of humor about it. And this is very relaxing for us as human beings, because it makes us feel like we can relate to that person. This is one of the reasons why we like certain celebrities. There are certain celebrities that are just very, very open about how they experience their lives, and it's very endearing. You might feel like you know them very well when in fact you don't know them at all, and certainly they don't know you. But the first thing that we need to do in order to start to open up that wall, to bring down some of those shields and start to be able to express ourselves in a lighthearted way, even the things that, the little faux pas and oddnesses that we have as quirky individuals, the things that actually tend to make other people feel comfortable with us. In order to be able to express those things, we first need to come into an agreement of what those things are that we're experiencing. Oftentimes, what we are expressing, even though we believe we're expressing it honestly, oftentimes we're not actually expressing what we think we're expressing. We have some idea, some feeling in ours, but it doesn't come out the way we want it to come out. And that creates a feeling of awkwardness. And the other person, of course, is not really going to understand us, because what we're expressing is not really what we're feeling. And the reason this happens is oftentimes, there's a number of reasons why it happens. One is human beings aren't nearly as consciously aware as we like to think we are. But two, oftentimes we're a little bit emotionally bound up, and that makes us, the awkwardness and whatnot, just kind of makes it so we sort of bumble our way through our expression. And the awkwardness itself makes the other person feel a little bit tense, a little bit awkward. And we might sense that and think of that as judgment. And that causes us to climb up even more. Of course, if we could just throw off all of the barriers and just be totally honest, that would be wonderful, and lighthearted about it. That would be wonderful. But the reality is, most of us aren't going to be able to do that. We're too self-conscious. So there's two things that I'm going to draw your attention to that might be helpful. The first one is that writing is going to be very, very helpful for you. And for those who are not comfortable with writing and maybe are not interested or will not sit down and write, I'll offer you another option as well. But I'll go through the writing aspect first. Now, I did not used to write. My first book was The Unbound Soul, and for anybody who's interested, that was just named one of the best books on consciousness of all time by Book Authority. So if you're interested, take a look at it. I think it'll be very, very helpful and offer you maybe a different perspective that you may have seen in other books on consciousness. But what I discovered through the writing is, so I wrote the entire book, then I edited it, and then rewrote it because I couldn't really understand what I was saying. And then, maybe a month or two later, reread it again, and I had to rewrite largely lots of it over again. And so what's happening is, the first time I wrote it, I thought I was expressing what I meant. And then when I would immediately read it, it seemed that I was expressing honestly and properly what I meant. But if I took a pause from it for a couple of weeks or a month and reread it, I found that, wow, this is not really quite understandable as I thought it was. It's because in reality, what we are seeing in our minds, what we think we're expressing, is not actually totally transparent to us. The reality is, there's sort of a difference between what we're projecting into the world and what we think we're projecting into the world. Oftentimes a vast difference between those two. There's a chasm. Writing is a perfect way to see this. So I would write it. I knew what I wanted to say. I thought I was saying it. Even when I read it immediately after, I thought I was saying it. And the reason I thought I was saying it is because I wasn't seeing the reality of the words that were on the paper. I'm still seeing the projection in my mind, what I think I'm saying. And therefore, I'm unable to see what's actually written there. And this is how we're living our lives. We're actually projecting oftentimes a reality that others are not seeing and that isn't actually there. And so there's a chasm between our expression in the world and what we think we're projecting. And it isn't until we take a step back from the projection and take a step back, create a gap between, that thought process and what we're projecting, where we can actually start to see what has been projected into the world. And that it is maybe far amiss from what we meant to project into the world. And so writing is a very good way to begin to reduce that chasm between what we believe we're expressing into the world versus what's actually being expressed into the world, and start to fill in the gaps of potential misunderstanding. So after I rewrote, I eventually realized I myself couldn't make it any more precise than I already had it. And so I submitted it to my editor, who then called me up on the phone and basically just told me how what I thought I was saying was not what I was saying. But basically the whole process of his editing was pretty much that repeated sentence. This is what you're actually saying to me. I don't know what you think you're saying, but what you're actually saying is this. And what he was reading was very different than what I was intending. Now, no matter how precise we become in our language, there will always be room for misunderstanding. So that can never be totally resolved, because no two human beings have the same experience. No two human beings have the same association between experiences. A good way of of understanding what I mean by the association between experiences is my survival instructor a long time ago. He studied survival. He used this metaphor. Think of a snake, and he had everybody think of a snake. And he says, okay, I want you to write down 2 or 3 things that you associate with snakes. And then so we did. And then he had a few of us, we raised our hand and read off some of the things we had. And different people had vastly different emotional level associations with snakes. Some people thought pet and beautiful, and some people thought slithery and venomous and poisonous and deadly and scary and terrifying, and some people thought wise and teacher and spirit animal, and just very different experiences with the snake, even though we're seeing the same physical thing. A snake in our mind's eye, we have an image of a snake. What we're experiencing with that image is totally different. So there's always going to be that level of misunderstanding. So the most we can do is get our words as accurate as possible and get our expression of those words as open as possible, so that the other person feels a graciousness toward us and would be more inclined to want to understand our perspective on snake or anything else we have to say. If our words are very accurate, but there isn't any kind of feeling of openness behind our words, the person isn't going to want to understand you, and there won't be that graciousness that could be available to you otherwise. Not everybody is going to be gracious and agreeable to whatever it is you say, but if we are open-hearted and light-hearted, and our words are accurate, and we ourselves know what we want to say and are able to actually say that into the world accurately, then much greater percentage of people will actually be gravitated toward you and want to understand what it is you have to say, so that you can be understood. So of course, the first step is you have to want to be understood. The second step is you have to be accurate in your words, and the third step the third step is that you have to be accurate in the feeling behind the words, which means have a feeling that is open, such that another person might want to hear and feel that they can connect with you in a way where there can be a real communication. And so writing helps. One of the biggest elements is that there's that chasm between what we think we're saying and what we're actually saying is oftentimes quite vast, and we mostly don't realize it. And this is one of the reasons why writing is very, very helpful. And I'm eternally grateful to my editors, Ed Hall and Hester Lee Furry, for helping to bring that to my attention. And so in my writings now, I'm much more accurate than I used to be. And of course, it's just an ongoing process of refinement. Now, for those who are not interested in writing, real quick before I move on, when you write, whatever it is you want to write, keep a journal or diary, you go back maybe every couple of weeks and revisit what you wrote. So the tendency is we don't revisit it. Revisit what you wrote and rewrite it to make it more accurate. And then revisit it again maybe a month later and rewrite it. And this is what's going to refine the process. If you write something and then you revisit it the next day, it's still too fresh in your mind, that the projection of what you thought you were saying is still too clear in your mind. And that when you read it, essentially you're seeing what's in your mind and not really what's on the paper. And this is a very good example of how we're not really seeing reality. Oftentimes, our projection, what's going on in our mind, is actually overlaying what we're seeing in reality. And we miss a lot of things as a result in reality, in the objective reality, so to speak, that we would otherwise be aware of if our projections were not crowding out our awareness. For those who writing doesn't work, meditation is probably the best tool that you could find for creating a kind of clarity and closing the gap between our expression and what we think we're expressing. And the reason that meditation is, it depends on how practiced we are the meditation, and how well we're able to get to the place I'm going to describe here. When we meditate over a period of time, especially if it's happening on a daily basis, and that's really, really vital that it happen on a daily basis. If you make a goal to meditate every day for a month, for example, you may start to notice that there starts to be a gap between two phenomena. One phenomenon is the self that you thought you were, all your thoughts, your emotions, turbulences, your life story, and direct perception. Just pure clarity in being. There starts to be this gap. Whereas before, all there was emotions and thoughts and your life story. There was no clarity. There wasn't this other view. As you meditate, that other view starts to manifest itself to you. Really, that is actually maybe the deepest you. The story, the thoughts, and the emotions, that's actually much more surface stuff that you've been caught up in. And a lot of the confusion that we have and the miscommunication we have between people is a result of being caught up in our life story and a result of being overwhelmed by thoughts and emotions. And so when that clear you emerges, when it shows up, when you start to see very clearly, then it's much easier to communicate because we're not defending anything anymore. We're not caught up in anxiety, and we're not caught up in depression. We're not caught up in emotions and thoughts. Instead, it's not that we're not feeling anything. We are feeling, maybe even more clearly, but we're not identified with the feelings. We're not defending them. And it's that defensiveness that keeps us a little bit feeling off, awkward, out of balance, and unable to express in an open way. And once that defensiveness is gone, people feel that they can communicate with you much better because they have nothing to hide from you. They don't feel you're going to judge them because you're clear. And so if we can actually practice the meditation as well as the writing, that's even doubly more powerful. And so I highly, highly recommend just keeping like a little pocket notebook. I keep one with me. When I lived in Japan, I was studying a lot, and I would keep multiple little pocket notebooks, so 2 or 3 in my pocket at any one time for different topics. One would be for my job-related stuff. Another would be for my dojo or martial arts related stuff, and another would be for like meditation and sort of awakening related type insights. And all you need to do is write down enough words early on in those little notebooks so that you don't forget the concept you want to express later on your computer. You'll fill it out with more detail. But what will happen is you will become ever more aware of your inner space, ever more aware of your word choices, and more agile in your ability to use your language to accurately reflect what you are feeling inside. And furthermore, you'll actually start to become much more aware of what you are actually feeling inside, what the intentions and motivations, what are the energies behind those motivations. And you'll start to notice that your consciousness sort of stacks up in layers. As you become more clear, you're going deeper into these layers of perception, layers of motivation, essentially layers of the story of you, but it's no longer seen as a story of you. It's just seeing the story of this human creature, like this pet, this animal. You're almost seeing it like from a third person point of view, so it's clear you're not justifying things or defending things. Well, at least you do that less. So again, you feel alone because of defensiveness, of awkwardness, as well as because of a gap between what you think you're expressing and what you're expressing. There's another gap between what you think you know about yourself, what you actually know about yourself. There's another kind of inner division. What you actually know about yourself may be a lot less than you think you know about yourself. It certainly was the case with me and everybody that I've ever worked and taught meditation to. So you've got those are just several layers of gaps that create an imbalance and an awkwardness. First one, of course, is what you think you know about yourself and what's actually happening. That gap causes an imbalance. The next one is what you think you're expressing and what you're actually expressing. That causes another imbalance. The next level is the self-consciousness of how we are being perceived by the other person, which makes us feel a little awkward, a little different. Maybe we feel like we're being judged, so we're going to start veiling our words and start being. We might even physically be a little bit awkward um, in our expression, which makes the other person feel kind of strange, right? We don't know what to say, essentially, and feeling judged. Now we start to withdraw into ourselves and are unable to express ourselves fully. Now, of course, not everybody feels this way. Some people are quite, socially confident, and they just don't care. And incidentally, they're very easy to get along with because they just don't care. As you go through this exploration, you'll start caring less about opinions of you, evaluations of you. You will start caring less about opinions that other people have of you, as well as opinions that you have of you. All of that stuff will just be, peanut gallery stuff that doesn't mean much. You'll start to the shell will start to come off. You'll be able to express yourself more easily. You'll be able to, do the funky chicken in the dance room and not care that it looks ridiculous, and people will start laughing, and they won't be laughing at you. They'll be laughing with you because you're doing it intentionally. It's fun, that sort of thing. And so it sort of opens you up and releases that inner child into your life, the thing that you have most been missing. And the thing that you have been missing is what has caused you to feel so alone, is causing you to feel so misunderstood. It's because it's repressed. You might remember a time in your young childhood. I sure hope you do. If you don't, it tells you that the memory, either you've got a memory that's pretty weak, or maybe a trauma that made it so that you didn't have this experience in your childhood. So most of us will have a memory of a time in our childhood where the world was still magic. We had a magical friend or a ghost friend or whatever, when we went out, everything just was bright and alive and realer than how we see real now, colorful and bright and alive and interesting and mysterious and exciting. And now the world seems drab and dull, as if the magic is drained out of it. It's sort of dark and it's heavy and it's black and white and cold and distant. And this was the loss of the innocence. And it may have occurred early in your life. For most people, it happens prior to puberty. Certainly by puberty, this is typically lost. In my case, I can recall about being 8 years old when it was lost. I can remember the before and after, how things were so vibrant and interesting and mysterious and exciting, and how afterwards it was something I was aching to get back to that, but I couldn't get back to that innocence anymore. I remember I used to play the same old games and things that I used to play when I was younger, and things were innocent. Just the magic was gone. I couldn't reconjure it. As you start to peel away the layers of falsehood and shells that we use to protect ourselves, as we start to reduce the chasm between what we think we're expressing and what we are expressing, and the chasm between what we think we know about ourselves and what we actually know about ourselves, that innocence can re-emerge again, and we can make funny faces and do all that and enjoy ourselves without any concern about our position and how other people see us, right? In fact, when we do this, it allows other people to relax. Except for the most stodgy of individuals, don't worry about them. Most people will actually feel quite relaxed in your ability to be open and clear. So go ahead and get that notebook, start writing. Start practicing meditation every day and do these things. The key point is that they're done every day. So if you have to set aside even a short amount of time to write, even if it's just 5 or 10 minutes, do that. And just don't think too much, just write. Just let it come out. When you meditate, don't think too much, just meditate. Even if it's just 5 minutes or 10 minutes, do that. Go ahead and click share and like, and click the notification bell so that you can get more of these videos. And before I sign off, I'd like to remind you of the free 1 month trial of the Warriors Meditation. This meditation is extremely powerful. It can be practiced even by young children, and it will strip away the layers of self-protection and bring out that innocence that you've been missing, that magic that you've been missing, but it will also bring out a kind of awareness and authority in your life, because your mind will no longer control you. Your emotions will no longer control you. That clarity we discussed earlier will come to the fore, and that is a kind of authority. Go ahead and click the link in the description to the Warriors Meditation. Enter the discount code August 2019 for your 1 month free trial. Hope to see you there.